Chapter 13. Crawford had not had a good day, and his son was the one who was made to suffer. It began the moment Zack walked in the door. "Why are you so late?" Zack had spent a couple of hours watching the salvage from a hill overlooking Otteringa Bay. When he returned to Hermit's Hole, both Jess and Tasha were sleeping. He waited until he heard the Neanderthals drive off before waking them. Only then did he feel confident about leaving Tasha for the night. "I guess I lost track of time," he said. "Did you go to Sealandia?" "Nah, we'll get to that tomorrow. We'll do that tomorrow." "Didn't you get my text?" "No. What text?" "Check your phone." Zack did. "There's no signal," he said. His father looked at him as if he was lying. "Check yours," said Zack. Crawford went to his phone and glanced at it before grunting in disgust. "It's dead." Zack took the opportunity to change the subject. "How was your day?" he asked. "A disaster. Some idiot recognized me, or rather I thought I was Stanley. He got a photo with his phone. It'll be all over the news tomorrow for sure." In fact, it was all over the news that night on television. The financial section began with the U.S. ambassador saying she would raise the concerns of the Fort Morris investors with her government. "I don't want to raise too many hopes," she said, "but there are some avenues we can investigate." This was followed by the leader of the Morris Investors Action Group. He said that MIAG was pleased with the development, but it was only the first shot of what was likely to be a lengthy battle. "Our main aim is still to have Stanley Morris stand on the dock of a New Zealand court and face up to the distress and damage he has caused so many people. The sooner we get that crook back in this country, the better." The coverage then returned to the studio, where an image filled the screen behind the presenters. It was the photo of Crawford taken that day. Even with the beard, most people would recognize the person as one of the Morris twins. "This photo was taken today at Wellington Airport," said the female presenter. "The photographer is a businessman who has had previous dealings with Stanley Crawford. He says that while the man denied his accusations, the fact that he ran away when confronted confirms that he is Stanley." The camera moved to the male presenter. "If it is Stanley, then maybe MIAG will get their wish sooner than they think. We'll keep you posted." That was the end of it. At least on TV it was. At Terawhiti homestead, Crawford made his comment on the report. It was a single word, said loudly and with much feeling. There was further bad news on the internet that night. The story of a leopard loose in the suburbs of Wellington had gone viral. There had been other sightings from places as far apart as Waikanae, Upper Hutt, Miramar, Waitemata, and Eastbourne. It seemed that the leopard had been very active, covering hundreds of kilometers in a single night. Even though Zack had to laugh at all the sightings, he knew that they were not good news. Others would soon turn up looking for a big cat. Someone had begun a Facebook page about it. Brian's Phantom, it was called. Already, the Phantom had more than 2,000 friends. Most of the posts ridiculed Brian Dixon and his claims, but some took the possibility seriously. One caused Zack's stomach to churn. It was from a person called Skeptic. "Has anyone else thought of this?" wrote Skeptic. "Mikhail Papanov's big boat wrecks on the Terawhiti coast, and soon afterward a big cat pops up nearby. Seems more than a coincidence to me." Zack looked at the time of the posting. It had been written only a few minutes earlier. No one had yet added a comment. He considered hanging around to see what would happen. Instead, he turned off the computer. He had a fair idea of what was coming next, and the thought of it made him feel sick. The morning was still dark when Zack left the house on Saturday. He was worried about Tasha and wanted to check on her before anyone else was around. It was already too late. As he walked across the paddock to Wairiki Stream, beams of light sliced through the morning mist. A vehicle was driving up the track on the other side of the stream. "Brian and Sean, I bet," he said to himself. The light beams were too close together to be the Neanderthal's vehicle. Zack took a route that ensured the pig hunters wouldn't see him as they approached. Of course, that also meant that Zack couldn't see them either. By the time he got to a vantage point, the sky had brightened and he could see the vehicle clearly. It was a car, not a ute. and it was parked in the open. Zach's heart sank. This wasn't Brian and Sean. This was another lot of big cat hunters. Clearly, they believed Skeptic's idea that the big cat had come off Mikhail Popanov's yacht. There seemed to be 3 of them, but no dogs. Zach crouched down to watch them. After organizing backpacks, they took the path down to the stream. Zach breathed a sigh of relief. At least they were going in the wrong direction. Then, as they waded through the stream and walked past where he was hiding, his relief turned back to tension. Each of them was carrying a rifle. Zach waited until they were all well out of sight before leaving his cover. He had crossed the stream and was about to climb up the other side when another vehicle arrived. Again, he had to hide. There was much excited talking from the occupants as they climbed from the car. The word leopard was repeated several times. Next came a discussion about which direction they should take. 2 of the guys wanted to go upstream. A third argued that it would be dangerous with other people already up there. He said they'd have a better chance if they investigated the other side of Outlook Hill. Eventually the others agreed, and minutes later the voices faded as the hunters headed on their way. This time Zach left his shelter immediately. From what he'd heard, he'd feared they might be taking a route that went past Hermit's Hole. He was right. There were 4 of them walking through the paddock that led to Tasha's hideout. 2 of them had rifles. It took Zach only a moment to decide to follow. If they turned around, they would see him, but he no longer cared about that. The important thing was to be close by in case they found Tasha. That way he might have some chance of saving her. While he was less than 50 meters behind, none of the hunters were aware he was there. They were so excited by the hunt that everything else was shut out. They were also in a hurry, striding out on legs much longer than Zach's. He had to jog to keep them in sight. They marched toward the base of the hill and directly towards Hermit's Hole, making Zach think that the lead guy knew where to go. However, it soon became clear they were heading for the stream valley that would take them up the slopes of Outlook Hill. They passed where Hermit's Hole was hidden in the bushes, without even a sideways glance. Zach's breathing returned to normal. When the hunters were well clear, Zach reached into his backpack and took out the Roldy. It was time for an experiment. He didn't think Tasha would be able to get his scent this far from the hideout, but he was close enough for her to hear the balalaika tune. If she came out, then she would do it for anyone who played the music. She came out. Warily at first, until she saw who it was. Then she bounded forwards, leaping up at him so he could take her in his arms. Zach's heart soared as he took her in a great hug, surprised by the emotions he felt. Never before had he felt such a strong feeling of attachment to an animal. After the first rush of emotions, he became aware of how exposed he and Tasha were, standing in an open paddock for anyone to see. It was time to take cover and perform his second experiment. That was to find out whether Tasha's affection was real or just cupboard love for the food he had in his pack. He got the answer as soon as he entered Hermit's Hole. On the floor, between her bed and her bowl, were the remains of a bird. A pukeko, judging by all the purple and black feathers. The feathers and its guts were all that was left. Tasha gathered a wing in her mouth and brought it to Zach, showing off her kill. He dropped to his knees and once again hugged her. "Yes," he said, "you are a clever serval, aren't you?" After closing the door, he took off his pack and removed another steak he'd stolen from the freezer. "Are you still hungry?" he asked, holding the meat in front of her mouth. She gave a couple of sniffs before turning away. The experiment was over, and Zach had the result he'd hoped for. Her affection was much deeper than the basic desire for food. Tasha was purring. Both she and Zach were lying on her bed, the big cat's body curled within that of the boy's. Zach would have been purring too, if that were possible for a human. He never before had a pet, and was blown away by the way he felt. For him, it was a new kind of affection, but one that was tinged with a touch of fear. He was worried it wouldn't last, that just when he'd found this new feeling, it would be taken from him. As if sensing his fears, Tasha raised her head. She looked first at Zach and then towards the door, which she'd closed. Her ears started scanning. The purring turned into a low growl. Someone was coming. Soon Zach could hear something too, the rustle of bushes as they were pulled apart. He tightened his arm around Tasha. The thought of hiding flashed through his mind, but there was nowhere. They were trapped. The movement outside stopped. Tasha's body tensed as if getting ready to attack. For a time there was nothing, and Zack began to think they had left. Then the door gave a little squeak and began opening. Tasha started growling. She began chirping just as she had the day before with the Neanderthals. Ivan and Yuri, it had to be. Tasha? Called a voice. Tasha? But this was not the gruff call of either Russian. This was a pleasant, soft call, a girl's voice. An instant later, Jess was standing in the frame of the door. Zack! Jess! They laughed nervously. I was scared stiff, said Jess. I saw the closed door and thought. You should have called out sooner, said Zack. Tasha was getting ready to attack. Jess joined them on the bed. You wouldn't attack me, would you, Tasha? She said, lowering her face to kiss the top of the cat's head. You wouldn't attack Jess. In answer, Tasha resumed her purring. Zack moved back a bit to let Jess have time with Tasha. He was still spooked by what had happened. What if it had been the Neanderthals? What would he have done? What could he have done? He knew he wouldn't be able to protect Tasha against either of those two. If other people came, then he might have more success, but he doubted it. The sort of person who went hunting big cats was unlikely to respond to appeals for mercy. They would want a photo of themselves crouched beside a dead body, something they could post on the internet. That and a skin they could hang on the wall of the lounge and skite about whatever the mates came around for a beer. No, if he was going to protect Tasha, then he had to find some other way. He was about to raise this when Jess looked up and said, Did you see all those cars parked by the stream? I saw two, said Zack. I was there when they arrived. One lot went up the valley, the others came past here. There were 4 cars by the time I came through, said Jess grimly. We've got to do something more to protect her, said Zack. What? I don't know. A pause. What would your dad do if we told him? Probably he'd go to the Department of Conservation or the zoo or something like that. I think that's what we should do. Jess glared at him. No, I'm not ready for that. She'll get shot if we leave her here, snapped Zack in frustration. No, they'll never find this place. But what if she goes out to get another pukoko? Jess took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Okay, we'll shut the door. She pointed at the steak that Zack had put in the bowl. That should be enough until we get some cat food, but we need to give her water as well. She looked around. We can fill the candle holder until we get something bigger. Zack gave a brief nod, although he wasn't at all happy about it. But at least it was a start. He would make sure they talked about it again later. In the meantime, he could only hope that Jess was right about nobody finding this place, because shutting her in would mean that if the hunters did come, she'd have no chance of escape.